Hi, my name's James Coote and I'm an independent game developer making a game called Flight of Light. Today I'm going to be talking about Flight of Light's control scheme. So Flight of Light really began with me messing around with Wiimotes. So Wiimotes at their most basic simply output three numbers between 1 and 0 to represent how the Wiimote is oriented, how it's rotated, etc. And I looked at a number of other games that use Wiimotes, and they all seem to be just mapping that movement in the real world straight to movement in the game. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do something else. So I decided to map the movement of the Wiimote to colour, and specifically changing hue. So when you move the Wiimote, it changes that number between 1 and 0, and that would change the hue value. If you think of hue as a percent, so you've got a colour spectrum. On one end you got red, and the other end you got blue, and then all the colours in between. So if you're at sort of 0.3 you might get yellow, if you're at 0.6 you might get green, or whatever. So that's what I did. So I used the Wiimote to essentially control colour. The result was a really simple game where players move the Wiimote up and down to change their colour. The game then gives them a colour that they've got to match, and gives them a time limit in which to get as close as possible to that, after which they're scored on how well they match. And that was the original Flight of Light. That was the very first prototype of the game. Fundamentally, Flight of Light is still the same today, although it's evolved over time so that that very basic interaction is hidden under a whole series of layers of visual abstraction. So over time the given colours have become colour blocks on a roller coaster track, and the time that you have to match those colours is now the time to the next beat, which is the time also that the block takes to come along the track and hit you. When the spaceship rotates in the game, it's actually being controlled by that number between 1 and 0. So if it's 1, then it's on the right hand side of the arc, and if it's 0 it's on the left, and then if it's sort of 0.375 then it's going to be sort of kind of halfway on the left, a little bit down, and so on. So that movement is entirely controlled by that simple number in the background. The spaceship has over time lost the colour representation represented by that. It's been turned back into movement, except for the vapor trail. So if you look at the colour of the vapor trails on the spaceship, those are really the last indicator of colour. And that's what, like, a lot of people ask, okay, what do the different colours mean on the different notes that you're trying to hit? And actually they don't really have a meaning. They're just there to guide you. They're just there to match the colours, really. The consequence of all this is that Flight of Light can be very easily adapted to use different control schemes. Basically anything that can output a decimal number between 1 and 0 can be used to control the game. Combine that with being made in Unity, it actually allows the game to be controlled by all sorts of different devices. So experimental things like Kinect or even eye trackers. I sometimes joke that Flight of Light will be the only other game, aside from Mario Kart, where people will actually be able to use those plastic Wii wheels that they have lying around the house. Importantly, it also means that the game will work on multiple different platforms. So on the Wii U, obviously it uses the Wiimotes, but it can also use the touch screen on the gamepad as well. And on the PC you can use the mouse, so it uses the mouse swings from left to right. On the PlayStation 4 there's either the 6-axis motion control inside the DualShock 4 controllers, or it can actually use analog sticks as well. So I've made a version that uses analog sticks, and when it comes time to doing the PlayStation version properly, then it'll be a case of testing out which one works and which one feels more natural. That said, each input does take a certain amount of fine-tuning and adapting to make it work really well. So averaging out the input, setting the parameter ranges is important to make it feel right. It's something I'm still working on with the PC mouse version, But with the Wii remote version, one of the key lessons there was to have the movement 1-to-1. So if you move the Wii remote by 5 degrees in real life, then the spaceship will rotate by a corresponding 5 degrees in the game as well, and that makes it feel really nice. Makes it feel like you're literally turning the spaceship. So hopefully that gives you some idea of how the control scheme originated and how it works in Flight of Light. I know a lot of people look at motion controls and go, ew, motion, I don't like that. But I really feel strongly in this case that this game has been designed from the ground up with motion control in mind. And I feel somewhat vindicated by that decision, by the fact that I've been able to then adapt the game to use other control schemes, and they've worked really, really nicely. Yes, they need a bit of adjusting, but they've felt right, or close to right, felt natural, almost straight away, and that's really encouraging. As always, feel free to leave comments in the comments section below, and if you want to check out more about the game, you can go to www.crystallinegreen.com, or you can follow me on Twitter. I'll put the links in the description. Thanks for listening.